actually kind of going back to Europe. This was not intentionally scheduled, but between Paolo and Adam, and then this morning with Alex, we've been spending some time in Europe. So I got to know Paolo when he ran a program in Italy called Tech Peaks. It was in really northern Italy, actually not dissimilar from the background that Alex had up. I always tell people, so I have family still in Italy, and it was fun to go back, see the family, and then take the train up to see Paolo in northern Italy. But it was literally like, this is a very American reference, I acknowledge, but it was literally like opening your doors to the sound of music. I mean, it was just kind of amazing views behind you. And he had aggregated beyond just the amazing views, he'd aggregated some amazing entrepreneurs there. So that's how he and I first crossed paths. We recently reconnected because he has a book coming out with Adam, which he's going to talk to you guys. They're going to talk to you guys a little bit about today. But when I started to read the book, I always have a policy of not blurbing books until I read them. So I started to read the book so that I could provide a blurb for it. And as I started reading it, I was like, oh my gosh, we have to get these guys involved in the forum this year. And so they were gracious enough to connect with us and spend the next 30 minutes or so, a little bit less than that now, talking about the work that they're doing. And I think this is going to be incredibly impactful. So Paolo, Adam, really appreciate you guys making time today to chat with us here at the Corporate Entrepreneurship Forum, and I will hand the floor over to you.
Awesome. Great to see everyone. This is really cool. I love a good introduction. I'm taking some notes here. You got two perfect segues. The meeting with Paolo. I don't know if we mentored together at the same program, but
I think you did.
So that's how I met Paolo on the opening the door. What was it? The Sound of Music, you said? I took that.
That's what it felt like to me. It literally felt like you swung the door up to the Alps, for me at least.
I took that same train ride. So we'll get into the Tech Peaks experience in a second. The other softball that you gave me, how can large companies work with startups? That's what Paolo and I have been spending the last 2 years writing this book about. To the other authors on this panel, I don't know how you do it. It's really hard writing a book, but we're proud of the work that we've come up with. So that's a perfect day. How can large companies work with startups? Before I introduce myself and Paolo, I want to thank Sean, our new friends Neil and Dalal that just went. It's an honor to follow Alex, and also recognizing Veterans Day. So thank you to anyone who has served. Okay, so we're going to talk about the name of the book is Startup Program Design. And this was just such a cool story for me. I started off on the startup side. So this is such a cool journey. Started off on the startup side, journeyed to the corporate side, and teaching a lot of the stuff that Alex talks about, and Eric Ries and some of the lean startup stuff inside. So we're going to talk about build, buy, partner. The book is about partner, but we're going to talk about all the different. We'll save the slide. Paolo's driving for me for a second, so we'll do a couple more intros and then we'll get to build, buy, partner. So just on my background, startup side, failed founder, sort of a cliche. Used lean startup design thinking, MVPs to go inside, and now sort of landed naturally in the middle, so to speak. And that exact thing, how can large companies work with startups? We think that it's not just another, hybrid mixture. That's kind of the natural fit to solve the world's biggest problems going forward. Paolo, do you want to do a 2-second intro, and then we'll go forward?
Thank you, Adam, and thank you, Sean, for having us here and the opportunity to present our research and work. Yeah, my background is I've been working in early stage companies and early stage investing for over 10 years now. And as Sean said, at some point I started this program in what we would call today Startup Chile in northern Italy, for those of you who know this. So it was like kind of a corporate government run accelerator. And after that, I went into a lot of corporate accelerators, incubators, hackathons, all kind of programs, including also early stage CVCs, and seen that from inside. And all of this experience, we try to condense into this book. I'll leave this to Adam because we're conscious of time, and then I'll pop in halfway through the presentation.
All right, so as you can probably tell already, I am the divergent thinker, and Paolo is my yin. We're yin and yang, so he's going to converge. We were conscious of time. We were going to go through 10 minutes in. We'll go a hard stop, 15 minutes in. I'm going to introduce some ideas. We're going to run an interactive exercise, and then we're going to call it. 15 minutes in, and then Paolo's going to present some of the more sit back on demand research, and you can have your coffee and sort of digest. But for the next 7 minutes, I'll introduce a few new ideas, and we are going to do one experimental module. All right, so we're in build by partner. I had some fun crossing these out. We're not picking on build, certainly the internal route, and we're not picking on buy. There's still certainly a lot of areas where corporates and governments need to go that route, but we are seeing a trend towards partner. So this build by or partner, exactly what you're partnering towards. I was glad to see some of the slides already kind of answer that question, but let's just say the objective of build by partner is innovation in the generic sense and ambidexterity in sort of the more advanced sense. And we'll unpack that on the second half, on the downhill slope of this talk. So I'll leave it a little bit vague just so the exercise works. And then I'll leave the burden. Paolo will sort of clean up that mess for me. To keep on that theme, we sort of have this thesis that you have this completely internal innovation on the one side, and you have completely external innovation. On the internal side, there's sort of that joke or that meme that I've told a lot of. What if we train people and they leave, and then the response is, well, what if we don't and they stay? So it's kind of funny. It's also kind of true. On the other hand, it's also kind of true that some of the pure entrepreneurship training, people do tend to leave. So I always find that to be a pretty interesting anecdote. So on the totally internal route, there's problems. You can't do everything all by yourself. Someone just said, dog years, corporates are slow. It's hard to innovate. Corporates are set up to actually reject change and innovation. So it should be evident, self-evident, sort of some of the issues with going the completely internal road. Total external road of just M&A and buying startups, we're seeing also this start to move towards the center. In our mind, CVC is sort of this move towards the center of M&A, getting involved a little bit earlier, having a little bit more control, partnering with startups. So the thesis of the book is sort of this move towards the center, this move towards partnering, this move towards collaboration to solve some of the world's biggest problems. All right, if you accept that, and just the skunkworks reference here is that sort of the first step, external, and CVC is the first step internal. And then again, centering in the center. So if you accept that CVC was sort of in this first step from pure external innovation, moving a little bit inside, having a little bit more control, making these investments, this is where, and now I'm staring at the time, I'm already 4 minutes, I've got 4 minutes left. See, I told you, Paolo, this stuff moves faster than we realized. Really ask you to participate. We spend all this time making sure links are working properly and setting up new accounts and new software. So we're going to send a link around. We're going to put it in the chat so you don't necessarily have to copy the bit.ly. What is the job to be done? And I think Neil gave away the answer, which is a good thing, in my opinion. Let's see if the audience participation reflects that. And Paolo's going to talk about the jobs. I'm going to watch and see if any answers come in here on my other screen here. So I'm going to wait for at least one. I won't. So if you go to that link, I know some people are probably on their phones and taking a lunch break. This will only hurt for a second. I'll force a little bit of participation and then I will back off of it. Let's see if we get any answers. All right, great. So obviously we plan to share the actual word cloud in real time, but I'll just kind of fast forward to the results. What we're calling the Big Bang, basically our research uncovered that really in a corporate venture firm, there were a lot of different jobs to be done. It wasn't just a return on investment. There was market research, which is what a great setup from the talk before. What's going on in the industry? How can we invest in impact and justice and fairness and climate? New technology. I'm seeing in the word cloud, competition, preventing competition. So what we're calling the Big Bang, we've seen that there were a lot of different jobs to be done inside of CVC, which then moved some companies to start doing accelerators and all these different kinds of models. Even when we were doing some research for the book, I went to Salesforce's homepage to see their corporate arm. And luckily, and we'll go to that slide and then I'll turn it back to Paolo. what we've seen is basically it wasn't just different verticals. It wasn't just that we're investing in cloud versus AI, all for an ROI, that there were very specific jobs to be done in terms of ROI, sure, but new technology, internal tools, ecosystem building, and impact, which under that umbrella, we're fitting justice, fairness, equality, equity, and climate. So there were all these different jobs. And if you take that at face value, as you specialize and as sort of the long tail of programs emerge, there are a lot of different types of programs that are now being designed and developed for corporates and startups to work together that sort of match those needs rather than just bundling them all inside of CVC. So I'll have Paolo explain that in more detail for the rest of the talk. And thank you for your time so far.
Thank you, Adam. So the real point we're trying to make here and in the book is that there are many kind of programs that have come out, and CVC that has already been mentioned, and there are accelerators, corporate incubators, even hackathons or other programs like that. But the fact that multiple jobs need to be done by these programs to get your startups to partner with you implies that there are different startups that can do those jobs, and there are different programs that are optimized to engage with those startups. And context really matters here. The CVC work, we never answer like yes or no. It always depends on the context that this program can work with and has to work with. And the context basically goes down to these 3 points that you see on the slide. So one is your organization and its strategy, the unique offer that you can give to the startups, the readiness level, the governance that you have in place for innovation, and the internal politics and the maturity of those politics to actually allow working with startups. Another one is objectives, that is, so the jobs to be done by that particular program in that particular moment of your company. And the third one is the status of the startup community. So how many startups exist there in the community that you can tap upon, and be it the US, Europe, South America, China, or wherever you're operating. Or even globally, how many of those you can reach, and what are the motives of those people to work with you. There are, so this space that depends on context actually is bringing more and more programs to be hybridized. And there's no one program that works always, all the time. This hybridization is creating an industry where we are now designing startup programs to be optimized for the specific situation of your corporation. So, but still there are some local optima that have come out throughout history that work in a better way than just random configurations. One of these is, of course, the most well-known, that is the financial investment that has been set up by private venture capitalists and then later adopted by corporations. But there are CVCs that are struggling with the model to make it work, and others that are succeeding. One of these that has been recognized widely as fairly successful is Intel Capital, that started with a few iterations in the early 90s, and then by year 2000 more or less adopted this strategy that was very much similar to an independent venture capitalist. So they would invest in a superior technology, independent on whether it was already on the roadmap of internal business units, just to make it work so that the startup could develop more and even surpass Intel. Or they would invest when a startup was promoting a standard Intel was interested in, or they would invest to stimulate demand for Intel products. And the metrics they were using for themselves was the same as any other venture fund. this kind of model, if you go very much financial, works because you keep alignment with the fact that the startup has to grow in order for your endeavor to succeed. But the drawback at the same time, there's an alert here, a caveat is if you adopt a financial model, then you're going straight against the venture capitalists. And so you also have to adopt all of their logic and invest in the top 3%. There's another goal that has created a local optimum in the space, that is the one of solution sourcing. When a corporation goes out to solve a very specific innovation problem that has been identified. And here a case study could be the Unilever foundry that is still kind of operating, but really had its core operating years between 2014 and 2018. So Unilever created this process inside by which they were doing a very strong internal problem scoping with the business units, what they call a brief, understand one of the brands of Unilever, what kind of innovation they wanted to introduce, create a problem statement, publish that problem statement online, get startups involved to pitch, choose a few, one or two typically per challenge, to run a pilot with them. And then finally, if the pilots showed performance metrics that would be beneficial, then go on and partner and create a partnership. So the program here was to really get all those unknowns that are behind the collaboration known before you go on and greenlight the collaboration, and probably reduce or even remove some roadblocks in terms of understanding or misunderstandings that could be generated between the startup and the business unit before engaging for the scale up. So the problem with these kind of models is that the scale up phase is not that easy as it could be. And so the alert in these models is what we call the pilot trap. The fact that the companies become so much better, or the program becomes so much better at producing pilots, then the company is able to absorb the pilots and scale them up and integrate them later. A third kind of objective, and all of these optima are optimized, are anchored on the objective circle that you see on the bottom left. But we could have done a different exercise, but that's for the next time, to anchor it on the other two circles. But so the third objective that you see here is ecosystem building, and ecosystem building means that the corporation has a platform that could be a technology platform, like even like a cloud computing system, or a business platform, or an operational platform. It could be a co-working space, and a lot of governments or cities are doing that, and they want startups to adopt that platform. So this is kind of a marketing exercise. At the end of the day, you're selling a product that is the platform, and you want to create an adoption around it, but it's not really sales, it's still partnering, because the platform and the startups need to change a bit in order and adapt in order to use the product. And the model here, if you want, is a SAP. An example is SAP.io foundries that call themselves accelerators, and we call them onboarding accelerators. So what they optimize, they still work a bit like the challenge that I described before. So they get a brief, a problem statement from inside the corporation. They get startups to pitch, they onboard startups on the platform that is the SAP technology and their app center. And then at that point, this is different. So the onboarding is facilitated, which doesn't exist in challenges. And the acceleration then is also done to grow the startup's business, because if the startup grows, then the usage of the platform goes, and that is beneficial to the corporation as well. So in a sense, this is kind of a bit of a hybrid between the previous two, and it has some kind of different metrics. Again, usage is one of them. And it has a different problem. That is what we call the incentives dry up problem. This is when startups that got hooked on the platform because of perks or discounts finish the credits, the free credits they had, and at that point decide to switch and go somewhere else. This is the flag for this. And there's a fourth kind of category of objective that has been optimized for, that is what we call transformative impact. And this is when the corporation, for reasons that are, for example, related to corporate social responsibility or to internal cultural change, decide to get someone better through entrepreneurship. And an example of this is what the Google.org Foundation did with this program called Fellowship. They were giving a paid leave to employees, Google employees, to spend time with social impact startups. And the idea was that in those 6 months, these employees would spend with the startups, both would learn from each other, and the employees would get a bit of the explorative skills that founders, startup entrepreneurs typically get skilled in. And on the other side, the startups could get an expertise that otherwise they wouldn't be able to pay for or to access at the stage where they are, especially in social impact, where there's a bit less investment, or there has been historically, and it's probably now improving lately. So this worked well because there was still a strong alignment during the program between, because the exchange was clear. However, the caveat here is that these kind of programs have very soft metrics sometimes, or even if they use financial metrics and the hard metrics, they have to soften them up for the kind of impact that they are aiming for. And so self-sustainability of these programs is sometimes jeopardized. But the real point I want to make here is that, as you've seen, there are optima that impose different features on the program, but they don't go with a model one-on-one. It's not that one of those goals was better achieved by a corporate venture capital arm, or by an accelerator, or by a challenge. In fact, our claim is that you can take an accelerator or you can take a challenge, and by tweaking the features that are inside those macro models, you can actually work for the context and the objective that you want to work with. This is my basically my last slide. I want to give some space to interaction if we can, but just these are the key takeaways that I want you to go away with. One is that there's no Holy Grail in startup programs. And the reason why there is no Holy Grail is that the context is so important. And we have understood now that this is kind of a design problem, when you can't just copy and paste, or if you do it, which is not bad, everybody does it, if you hybridize as well, that should come with intent. You always have to check that what the context that you copied from has something in common with yours. Actually, it's the same, and if it's not, you need to adapt the features. At the end of the day, since this is a design problem, you have to iterate. You can't get it right. You must be very lucky to get it right the first time. So when you start a program, to give structure, as Alex said before, to the collaboration with startups, then you need to plan ahead on 3-5 years, so that you give yourself time to iterate and adjust the program to the best of what it can do for your context. And with that, I'm finished, and the time is almost finished as well. Adam, I'll leave you.
All right, so in 2 minutes or less, I'll say a couple things. First of all, my favorite Mark Twain quote: "If I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter." So thank you all for indulging us. We've literally spent 2 years and our whole lives in this topic, so condensing it into 30 minutes, not easy. So thanks again. The other thing in terms of key takeaways and a summary. I think it's really interesting. And I think this group knows very well, starting with the solution and solutioning. But it seems, starting with, oh, we're just going to work with startups, or we're going to run an accelerator. I think other than the copy and paste situation and unbundling jobs to be done, just working with startups is not the ends, is the means, not the end. Okay. And so just running an accelerator, just working with startups for its own sake is not ideal. And questioning why are we doing this? And so even writing the book, it felt so obvious, the whole journey through. So we're curious to hear your thoughts on how self-evident that is. On the final slide, Paolo and I are both a bit shy on just promoting a book. That's not why we're here. We're here for the community and the dialogue and the learning. But if you follow this link, we'd love to give away a couple of free copies of the book. We would love to spend half an hour with you and sort of, we do test this stuff in our we have clients that we're working through this stuff on a daily basis, but we'd love to hear from all of you and book an hour in exchange for a free copy. So thanks again for your time. I'll try and end on time for one.
Thank you all.
All right, Adam, Paolo, that was incredible. Thank you. As the book gets closer to coming out, we'll make sure to continue to promote it at CSL as well. And Paolo, I know you're in London now, but we need an excuse to get back to Northern Italy for some pasta together. If
we will find it. We will find it. Thank you so much.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys. All right.
Everyone's invited to Paolo's house next fall. It's
if you want to pick olives, it's a bit more to south, but you're welcome to join us. Adam has already done it once. So.
All right, sounds fantastic.